Hello and welcome to another edition of Fisher Football Focus. I'm your host, James Bailey. It was Alumni Weekend this past Saturday at Fisher. The Cardinals treated their alums to an Empire 8 matchup against Buffalo State. Coming off a thrilling Courage Bowl game, Fisher was looking to ride high on their momentum. Let's see how they did.
Let's start with a flashback. Last weekend, senior quarterback Matt Nathan led the Cardinals all the way down the field and scored the game-winning touchdown with 10 seconds remaining to help win the Courage Bowl. What wasn't known at the time was that Nathan had injured his thumb on the drive. He had surgery early last week and will miss the next several weeks. Freshman quarterback Colin Fuico would be forced into duty. Fast forward back to Saturday, Fuico in his first snap of his first collegiate start holds nothing back, throwing a jump ball up to Will Kuhn. Kuhn out-jumps the defender and finishes the play, 78 yards to the house for Fuico's first collegiate touchdown. Buff State took a longer path in their first drive, but it would end in the same result. Dale Stewart scampers in from 7 yards out to even the score early. Then, early in the second quarter, the Bengals would grab their first lead. Trey Jones takes a handoff to the right, 10 yards into the end zone to make it 14-7 Bengals. Later in the quarter, Fuico hands off to James Chambers. The good news, Chambers would gain 37 yards on the rush. The bad news, Chambers would be injured on the play and may miss the remainder of the season. The Cardinals would score on their following play as Fuico hits Mike Cleachill from 5 yards out. Buff State field goal would make it the score 17-14 Bengals entering the half. Buff State would start the second half with a long kick return that put themselves in the great field position. On the first snap of the half, Kyle Hoppy goes deep and, stop if you heard this before, he's picked off by Alec Mortellaro. Fisher unfortunately couldn't take advantage and score on that next possession. However, later in the third, they would return to the end zone. Fuico hits a wide open Wyatt Staley who brings the ball 35 yards, very reminiscent of his touchdown last weekend. Buff State would answer. Early in the fourth, Jones takes the option pitch 8 yards to the house to give the Bengals back a 24-21 advantage. Fisher would need a gritty effort to regain the lead, and that they got. Linebacker Chris Smith, forcing the backfield due to the Chambers injury, gives it all he has on this 17-yard touchdown run to give Fisher back the lead. Fisher needed one final defensive stop to clinch the win. Hoppy chucks it deep down the middle of the field, and DJ LaGoria is there to secure a 28-24 Cardinal victory. Fuico finishes with 3 touchdowns in his first career start. Smith got it done on both sides of the ball, finishing with a sack on top of his game-winning touchdown. The Cardinals remain undefeated on the season.
Up next, Coach Paul Vosberg is back, so stick with us.
Every time I hear the alarm bell go off in school, I think it's an air raid.
A lot of houses in our neighborhood have been destroyed.
I like to close my ears and sing songs whenever the bombs come close.
I'm worried our new neighbors won't like us.
But I know it's all gonna be worth it.
I just want my family to be safe.
But these are not my words.
These are not my words.
These are not my words.
Welcome back to Fisher Football Focus, joined yet again by head coach Paul Vosberg. Happy to have you back on, Coach.
Thanks for having me again.
All right, so last time we saw Matt Nathan, he was sneaking into the end zone to win you guys the Courage Bowl. Little did I know at that time, or probably most people watching, that injured his thumb there on that final drive. So definitely had to pull a wrench in your game plan having to go out there to start a freshman quarterback this week. When's the last time you had to do that?
I don't think we've started a freshman since Greg Rowland, and that was like 2001. So it's been quite a few years since we did. Greg was an outstanding young man from St. Joe's up in Buffalo, played really well for us in that. But it's been a long time since we've had to start a freshman quarterback.
So that freshman in question there, Colin Fuico, he had 2 career pass attempts coming into the game, played a little bit against Olivet, but really just a green player. Had really very little snaps, very little experience here at the college level, and stopped into this game, very first pass of the game, very first play of the game, throws a 78-yard touchdown to Will Kuhn. What do you think that does to a player like that's confidence coming out there, first start, home crowd, big alumni weekend crowd, to go out there and make that big play, first play of the game?
Well, I think it might have settled him down a little bit that, okay, I got us up. We're up 7-0 right off the bat. I think it calmed him down, and I think it sent a message to the rest of our team. Colin can do this. He can lead us to a victory as our quarterback and so on. And third, I think it sent a message to Buffalo State that our freshman can play. He's ready to go.
Yeah, and so obviously at the injury to Nathan, we're already down Tony Fusco, and then you lose James Chambers there in the second quarter. Had to bring Chris Smith. So another question for you. Have you ever had to throw a guy that was out there playing linebacker, sacking the quarterback on one side of the ball, throw him in and be the running back for the rest of the game?
We had one year where we ran out of running backs and we took a linebacker, but that was wasn't right during the game. we lost all our running backs one year. There was 96 or 97, somewhere in that neighborhood. And Sully, who used to be a running back when he first came to Fisher, had moved to linebacker. Now we had to move him back, and he finished his career as a running back for us. But not in the middle of the stream like that. We knew that Chris had taken some reps as a tailback in our offense, so he was ready to be like the backup. Mm-hmm. But now he's moved past the backup to the number one running back for us.
Yeah, and obviously, limited reps there at that position too. And he obviously came in and was pretty productive. Had the long game-winning touchdown for you guys. So when you're going out there, we have two inexperienced guys. What do you think? How do you think that your offense going out there scoring 28 points? Are you happy with that overall performance?
Yeah, I think asking me before the game if we were going to be able to get 28 points, I would have wondered if we could get 28 points in a game with a freshman quarterback in there. But then when Chambers goes down, now it becomes even more of a question mark. But I didn't have any question marks about Chris. I know Chris was a very good running back when we recruited him. He was one of the top running backs in the state of New York. It's just that when Chris got here and as it progressed, we had Chris was an outstanding running back. Then we got Fusco to transfer in. We got Chambers to transfer in. And we had another young man that was a year older than Chris, Stromolo,
mm-hmm.
Steve Stromolo. And Steve was a kid out of New Jersey who was a good running back. All of a sudden we got four really good tailbacks, and we're mostly a one-back set. So somebody had to move, and we thought we'd move Chris because we thought he could do an outstanding job, which he has at defensive end. And in fact, if people watching the game would have saw that at the end of the game, our tailback who had just scored a touchdown for us was now playing defensive end and trying to get a pass rush on the quarterback at the end of the game to help preserve that win for us.
Yeah, and he had a rushing touchdown and a sack in the game, so probably been a long time since you've seen that.
Yeah, that doesn't happen very often.
And talking about your defense, obviously they knew coming into the week with a young quarterback and not a lot of depth at running back, they had to come up big, and they did. They had the 3 interceptions headline. Alec Morlotto had the one to start the second half, really helped set the tone there. Had the one in the last possession there by Ligori, and also had all the momentum with 4 sacks, including the one by Smith. So your defense kind of went out there and definitely did they do what you wanted them to do?
Yeah, I think they played well, especially when we needed them to play well. There were some things I would like to. I thought we could have got off the field a few times earlier in the first half, and we let them continue to make a couple drives that got into touchdown, got into points. But then I thought they came up big they had one interception in the first half that took them out of a drive. That was a good change of momentum and so on. And then I thought that the biggest drive was in the fourth quarter when we turned the ball over at around midfield, and our defense went out there in 4 plays and stopped them, and then we got the ball and ended up scoring the winning touchdown because we were behind at that point, and the defense came up real big there. And of course, once we did get the lead, they continued to play well and kept Buffalo State at bay.
All right, and so moving forward, obviously, you're missing. You're missing Fusco for at least another week. You got Nate now a couple weeks. So I mean, this backfield there of Wico and Smith is going to be your backfield moving forward into at least this upcoming week. So you think that obviously they worked pretty well this past week, but you think you can kind of expand upon things and make things a little bit more complex, run a little bit more of your total offense now that they have an extra week to prepare?
Yeah, Chris will, because he's going to take all the reps as the number one tailback, so he's going to run some plays that he hasn't run in a little while. When we put him in there late in the game, or in the game when Chambers went down, we were kind of limited in exactly what we were going to run with him. But those are our base plays anyways, and he's good at them. Now he'll do a little bit more. And, Colin with a week under his belt and probably feeling a little bit more comfortable back there being our number one quarterback, I think that'll help us. But we need to go out and continue to do what we do and run the plays that we run best.
And then you got Morrisville up next. Coach Fitzpatrick, who you talked about last year, former player of yours. His team not doing quite as well this season. Started off 0-4, but they're going to be a solid team. They played you guys tough to a 34-29 game last year. Looking ahead, this would be one of those, the quote unquote trap games where you look ahead to a tougher game against Utica the next week before looking over Morrisville. So you guys take things one game at a time. You're confident you guys are going to stay focused here on Morrisville and be ready for this game?
We better, because Morrisville's the best 0-4 team you've seen, because they could have beat Utica. And they had Utica, and they make one or two more plays or eliminate one of Utica's plays, they're going to win that game. That was a tight game right down to the wire, and so on. And that's the way that Morrisville has been. Morrisville, to me, probably should be at least 2-2, if not better. So they're a very good football team. They move the ball well. Coach Fitzpatrick does a good job with that team, and so this is they've played a tough schedule, and they're 0-4. So this is a good football team. We cannot overlook this football team, because there's a team too. I thought that had they made some early mistakes against Buffalo State, they're going to be Buffalo State too. So this is a good Morrisville football team.
Would you looking for on the other side though? I mean, would you rather be playing an 0-4 Morrisville team with this kind of depleted backfield as opposed to a Utica or an Alfred right now? Or are you just always taking things one game, just looking at Morrisville?
It's just one game at a time. You can't. That's how you get trapped. Is you don't take it one game at a time, and you don't look at the record. The Empire 8, and Coach Boyce and I talked before the game at midfield, the coach from Buffalo State, and we were talking that the Empire 8 is a great conference. You can't overlook anybody, because anybody can beat anybody. And so on, and on any weekend, anybody can win. And Coach Boyce, the comment he made right after that was, the Empire 8 is the best conference in Division III football. There are other conferences that have some really top teams, but when you go from top to bottom, the Empire 8 is loaded, and that's what makes our conference what it is.
All right, Coach. Well, let you go now. Get ready for this upcoming weekend.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
After the break, seniors Chris Smith and Jake Kulik stop by, so stay here.
When some people struggle with their mortgage payments, they become frozen, petrified. Not knowing what to do, they do nothing. But the people who take action are far more likely to get the most positive outcome. Making home affordable is a free government program. Call now to talk one-on-one with a housing expert about the options that are right for you. Real help, real answers, right now.
Welcome back to Fisher Football Focus, joined now by two seniors on the team. We got Jake Kulik and Chris Smith. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. Thank you.
So we'll start with Chris. There's obviously been a lot of different circumstances. Heading into the year, did you ever think that you would have a chance to be diving in for the game-winning touchdown in a big Empire 8 game like that?
Heading into the season, absolutely not. It was a big surprise, but some guys got banged up and I had to fill in.
So, obviously, been playing at linebacker the past couple of years. You started here as a running back. The difference between transitioning though from a running back to a linebacker in between seasons is obviously different than having to convert back over to running back during the season. So how difficult was it to come back? Or was it easy just to get right back in it, or did it take a little time?
It was fairly easy to get back in it. I mean, I played running back my whole life throughout high school and even before that. So getting back to running back was the easy part. I mean, transferring from a running back to a linebacker / D lineman was a little bit more difficult, but I was able to do that too. Especially
heading into the week, having to kind of study for both positions, because you went out. My favorite stat from the week was that you had the game-winning touchdown, but you also had a sack on defense. So you were contributing both sides of the ball. I didn't know both game plans. So how difficult was that, kind of having to be prepared for both sides?
It was a little difficult. I mean, as you guys probably saw, we had a few miscommunications on the offensive side of the ball. I missed a handoff, just not knowing the play, and we had a missed exchange with me and the quarterback and a fumble. So it was tough, but I'm learning more and getting more used to the plays. So it'll be better next week.
So moving over to Jake, these past 2 weeks you guys have been playing teams that have more dynamic running backs. Obviously there was Dan Andrews for Brockport this past week, the two-headed monster there of Trey Jones, Dale Stewart. Did a decent job running down the run this week. You actually went out and dropped Jones for a big 7-yard loss in the third quarter, helped force a punt. How do you feel that you guys kind of performed these past two games against those offenses?
It's kind of hard to give you an answer on that, because looking back on those two games, we started off tremendously slow, and if you look at the numbers for both of those running backs, obviously, they had pretty decent games. So, you know, it's hard to say that we did our best against them. You know, I think we could have done a better job against stopping the run. But you know, like you said, they're two dynamic running backs, and you know, it's hard to bring those guys down and try and game plan for stopping them.
But I mean, you know, you guys did do a great job shutting down the pass, held the quarterback under 50% completion percentage, got 3 interceptions, so defense did enough overall. You know, being on the D-line, usually think about DNs being pass rushers, so going against a team that you know is going to primarily run the ball, how do you have to kind of prepare differently, and do you kind of prefer going against pass-heavy teams or run-heavy teams?
I like sacking the quarterback, man. You know, I think Chris can say the same thing.
Absolutely.
But you know, it's the game planning doesn't change. You know, pass-heavy, run-heavy. You know, we're prepared for anything. You know, we go through the week. You know, we go through top run plays, we go through top pass plays. You know, it's, you know, especially being up front where you get the first action, man. It's, you know, we're ready for anything. We really are.
And Chris, you imagine you like defending the pass too, but I mean, linebackers are also known for being the ones that that's when you rack up the tackles when you got teams at the run. So, do you see yourself more though as a pass rusher than a run stopper on the defense?
I like to pass rush. Absolutely, yeah.
So kind of going off that a little bit too. Obviously now you've had a little bit, you dipped your feet this year on the defense and playing running back. You know, this upcoming week, you know, you're going to be probably starting back there at running back. What if you had it your way? Which one would you rather be starting at, the linebacker, or would you rather be on offense playing running back?
That's a tough question, man. I mean, you know, I love the defense. I love the whole mentality of playing on defense. You know, I love those guys, but I started on offense, and I always enjoyed running the ball. So, I mean, it's impossible for me to make a call, man. Wherever the team needs me and wherever I can have success, I'll play there.
All right. So moving forward, I mean, you guys obviously have a good 5-0 start. You know, some games have been close, but I mean, you guys have come through a lot of adversity. You know, still got half the season left to go. Got some tough teams, but do you guys ever look ahead and say you know, we could run the table on this conference, and you know, finish the regular season 10-0? Do you guys look that far ahead, or just kind of take it one game at a time?
I mean, it's easy to look ahead and think of those things, but you know, our motto for this year, especially, is take one game at a time. You know, it's like I said, it's so easy to just look forward and be like, you know, we can beat these teams, we can run the table, we can go undefeated. But you know, if you look back on our history, you know, we've never won undefeated. So you know, it's got to be a one-game mentality. It's got to be, you know, we're playing Morrisville this week, we got to beat Morrisville. You know, regardless what their record is, you know, it's one game at a time. After that, we'll focus on whoever's next.
Right. Yeah, and Coach Keys, our defense coordinator, says all the time, you know, just focus on this week. You know, one game at a time. Get ready, prepare for this team. You know, this is our week. This week is with this team. So, one at a time.
And so you bring up Morrisville, obviously up next, and kind of allude to they do have an 0-4 record, but you know, they've been somewhat competitive in some games. Have obviously struggled in almost all assets passing the ball. So obviously another team that's probably going to rely more on the run. What are you guys seeing against Morrisville you would like to take advantage of?
This is their Super Bowl, man. I mean, this, you know, 0-4, it's most likely they're not going to make the playoffs. You know, they're not going to win the E8. So, you know, this is their Super Bowl. You know, they get to take a crack at the number 14 team in the country, and, you know, they're going to give us everything they got.
And Chris, obviously, you know, you're going to be focusing primarily this week on starting on offense. So have you looked at all on the Morrisville defense, anything you can kind of exploit?
Not yet. No, we usually have our meetings today and tomorrow coming up, going over the game plan, scouting report, all that. So I'll be ready to get into some film and start watching stuff later today and tomorrow.
All right, sounds good, guys. Thank you a lot for coming on. Good luck this week.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks,
you.
man. Appreciate it.
Don't leave. Assistant Coach Ryan Ballard will be on next. Welcome back to Fisher Football Focus, joined now by Assistant Coach Ryan Ballard. Happy to have you on the show, Coach.
Happy to be here.
So your title is you work with the linebackers. You're a linebacker coach here. So bet you had a few of them on your show. I've had Dave Carroll's been on, and then just got done talking to Chris Smith. How do you think your unit's kind of done this so far this year?
I thought they played really well. Defensively, I think we've done some really good things. There's some things that we always need to work on. As a coach, you kind of focus in on some of the negatives because that's your job, is trying to pick those out and trying to improve on those. But overall, to this point, I think we've done a very good job as a defensive unit.
So you get to work with Chris Smith, as you mentioned. Just had him on the show. He's really been kind of like the all-purpose guy for this team, bouncing back and forth from running back to linebacker and bouncing around. What have you seen out of him? Obviously, knowing that he's kind of been focused on both areas. He was successful this past week, had a sack, did some good things for your defense as well as the offense. What have you seen in him, kind of having to bounce back and forth?
Yeah. As a player, he's a very tough player, and he wants to do anything he can do to help the team out. I think he's a very well-rounded team guy, and whether it be pass rushing, getting after the quarterback, or if we need him to hop in an offense and run the ball, score some touchdowns like he did this past week. But he's a very tough kid, Chris is, and he's willing to do anything you ask him to do.
All right, so you graduated here in 2014, like many Coach Fosberg's assistants, graduate of this program, played for the team, and that means being only 2 years ago, you actually played with a lot of these upperclassmen. You were their teammate. So
yep.
How's the dynamic a little differently from being these guys as teammates and now have them take you seriously as their coach?
Yeah, it's they're seeing a little bit of a different side of me. I'm more professional with them, of course, and I got a little bit more power than I did. Then, of course, I was an upperclassman, they were underclassmen, so still got to boss them around a little bit. But, it's nice to get to work with them, and now I bring more experience because I've not only played, but I've also coached. This is my second year coaching, and, it's more experience, more knowledge I can bring and give back to them, stuff that I really wasn't able to teach them maybe a couple of years ago if they had questions or if I needed to help them out with something like that. So, 2 years really does make a lot of difference.
And you mentioned second year coaching, coach at Hobart last year. What brought you back here at Fisher?
It was just a better opportunity for me. Plus, my passion's here. Like you said, I was a graduate here. I played football here for a few years, and I actually have 3 relatives that played football here. So I've been around the program actually since the year 2000. I think was the first time I watched a game at Fisher. So yeah, 2 cousins graduated from here, and so did my brother. And known Coach Fosberg for a long time, and just got a real passion for Fisher football. And my experience at Hobart was really great. I met a lot of great people, some good coaches I got to work with, some really good players. But my heart was here at St. John Fisher College, and that's ultimately what brought me back.
So coaching now, is coaching something you see yourself doing long term?
Yeah, absolutely. My father has been a coach for 30-something years, and he was really happy to see that I actually took after him a little bit. And, he was at the high school level, done that for a long time, and, I've had the opportunity to be here at the college level, which is where I would like to stay, and we'll see where it goes from here.
All right, so I got a little short story because, as you mentioned, you were here 2 years ago, which means that your senior year is my freshman year here. So first 2 Fisher football games I saw were the Audubon game and the Salisbury game, and you personally went out. You had 9 tackles, tackle for loss against Audubon, and then you absolutely went off against Salisbury, 17 tackles all over the field. So I remember the next home game I saw was family weekend with my dad. I said, watch number 2. He's going to be around the ball every single play. And sure enough, you went out that game and went off again, 10 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 2 pass breakups, were all over the place. So that was your senior year. What was your personal favorite game from that senior year? You mentioned 3 right there.
Senior year, I'd probably have to say probably the first game. To be honest with you, we didn't do as well my senior year as we did the previous year, which was kind of a letdown. But the first game was really the first time you get to go out there and play in front of the whole crowd, and you get some new students. Like you said, you were a freshman. First experience, watching Fisher football, and kind of sets a tone for the rest of the season. And it was just nice to get out there and compete against a team in a different colored jersey. We see and go against our own guys through camp for about a month, before our own first game. So that was probably my favorite one. then and there. And I thought we did a really good job in that game. We were able to win the game, and kind of set the tone as a team and as a defensive unit. And I think we did have a successful season, even though we didn't end up how we eventually wanted to.
And as you mentioned, your senior year. Went 8-2, but missed the playoffs. Your junior year, you guys start off 5-0, just like this year. You lost your next two, but finished 8-2. Were able to make the NCAA playoffs, go to the quarterfinals. Difference to your senior year, also finishing 8-2, was kind of a big loss to Ithaca, second to last game of the season, which knocked you guys out of first place in the conference, and you guys weren't able to secure an at-large bid. So still a good year, 9-2, but not obviously the playoffs. Looking ahead, right now you're 5-0. The other undefeated team in the conference is Alfred at 5-0, and that's your final game of the season. So kind of seeing some parallels right now. From your experience, obviously you sound very disappointed with how your team finished your senior year. How are you going to use that as kind of motivation for the team to be like, you don't want to end up like that again?
Yeah. They just got to stay focused. I know through my experience as a player, we always would be in a tough game, and sometimes we come up short, and then the thing is not have the hangover from that game. We ended up losing a game that we should have won. The first game was kind of a toss-up. I know we played Salisbury a few times, and they were leaders in the league a couple of years, and we ended up losing that game. But then that wasn't what really killed us during the season. It was the hangover from that game that really we lost a game that we shouldn't have, and it ended up being Ithaca a couple times. So we just really need to stay focused and know that we haven't played our best football yet, and 5-0 is good, but that's still not going to get the job done, and we still need to kind of keep a lookout at the task at hand, which is Morrisville. Even though they're an 0-4 football team, they're a very good 0-4 football team. They, you overlook them, they can come in and hand you an L.
Yeah, moving on to Morrisville. That is obviously your opponent next week. Mentioned last segment I was talking to Jake and Chris. Not a great team passing the football, but they'll be more reliant on the run, and leading running back averages over 7 yards a carry. I mean, they do have some very capable offensive players. What are you going to be telling your guys this week to get them prepared for this upcoming weekend?
Again, they just need to stay focused. I think sometimes we overlook guys and teams. I thought the Brockport game was a key indicator of that. We came out flat and we were getting our butts kicked in the first half, and the second half they kind of woke up. We were able to come from behind and win. And we got to make sure that the guys are focused and understand that this is the Empire 8. I think it's one of the best conferences in the country, and it doesn't matter. The last place team could end up beating the first place team. You look at last week with Utica, they lost the game to Ithaca, and Ithaca hasn't been very good this season, but they came to play, and they handed Utica a loss. So, we got to just stay focused, have the guys rely on the stuff that we teach them, rely on their instincts, and really know that this team's going to come out and play, because they would love to knock off a 5-0 undefeated St. John Fisher team, even though they're 0-4. So we just got to keep them focused.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you very much for coming on, Coach. Good luck this upcoming weekend.
Thank you.
That's our show for this week. Be sure to check back next week after the Cardinals take on the Morrisville State Mustangs. For Carlin Television, I'm James Bailey. Catch you next time.